There we go. Stop BP. Welcome everyone. Welcome to Simulation Talk 221. What's up, Dapt? And my Brighton, how you doing? Wait for a few more people to show up. Welcome everyone. David Martinez. Oh man, data is going crazy. Well, welcome everyone. Simulation Talk 221. I hope everybody are feeling good. And let's dive into some stuff. Today I'm going to keep it short just because we are filming and these are full days and I got to preserve my energy, but I'm glad to show up a little bit and say hello. It is pretty late. Yep. What's up, Ambient Glass? Back on the West Coast doing some shooting. What's up, Lisa and Chrissy and AK Post? And today is just going to be kind of like me popping in saying hello. Maybe I'll answer a couple of questions, but for the most part, it's just going to be to wave at you and to say I'm still here. Everything's still good. Oh yeah, I forgot, Brighton, that you're in England. Get your message? What do you mean? I see it. Yeah, I see you saying hello. Hello from Germany, mate. Matematic. Noisy microphone? Anybody else hears that the microphone is noisy? There's zero reason for it to be noisy. This is a brand new laptop. Are you... Everybody else hearing is noisy as well? You know, it might be... Then, is TikTok... Am I noisy, TikTok? Do you hear a noisy sound? So, you know what it might be? It might be, the StreamYard itself. You know what? Hold on, let me see. Audio, stereo audio, reduce my background noise. Try 111. Can you hear me okay? Let me, how about now? Is that better? Yeah, so X is fine. YouTube is giving trouble, so it might be a connection between YouTube and, I don't touch the laptop. Can you hear noise right now? My hands. Well, if you hear me moving on the laptop like this sound, yeah, see, on X is not hearing anything. Weird. All right. Well, in any case, let's see if we can address a couple of issues. Here we go. Default can't hear anything. I can't really help then. Wait, you mean you can't hear me or you can't hear the noisy? What's up, Charlie? Good to see you, brother. Huh. All right. Well, we're gonna have to be okay with that because I need to be able to beat the scroll. I am currently in LA. This is why I wasn't showing up for. Thank you, Shauna. This is why I wasn't really showing up for the lives, just because we were filming quite a bit. So I hope everybody are okay. Amazing. How are you guys doing? I haven't spoken to you in a few days. I think the last live was. Can't even recall. Let me see. Your videos. The last one was April 24th. Wow. So almost a week that I haven't streamed, really. Damn. Feels like forever. How would society change if everyone knew we live in a simulation? Well, it depends on what we understand about the simulation. It's just kind of like asking, well, how would society be if we would understand more of what the world really is, right? That's really the same question. Charlie's asking, does your console have the same character as the laser light? Similar on it, yeah. Yeah, these codes are definitely showing up basically everywhere. Thank you so much. Hello, Spencer, someone online, summertime, and Cross. Bean, how are you? Up. Do you think the plus sign is necessary? Oh, is necessity. What do you mean by that, Julian? Do you mean the actual plus sign? you mean the laser? Great phones, new subscriber here. So by the very meaning of the word itself, simulation means that this simulation is being simulated from some pre-existing construct. What do you think that is? It's a good question. It's a good way of phrasing that question. Actually, a better way of phrasing the question in terms of it doesn't mean that it's fake, because it's a closer description of what's going on, but it is a good outline. So what you might want to add to that is that we think of something being simulated on the basis of something else, because we think of our physical reality in terms of the real thing, and everything we compute, we think in terms of, well, it's kind of like an added layer on top of it. But if you understand that the world at bottom is actually computational and not physical, then you understand that the physical is actually just one form of simulated environments that are possible in the larger computational space. And then it flips the term upside down. Simulation stops meaning a copy of, and it starts meaning a version possible in. I don't know what that is. So what that means is that simulation basically transforms to mean a parallel world, which is basically the case. I agree that we can maybe try and find a different term, maybe like simulacrum or something like this, but this environment is being rendered on a computational substrate in a much larger space. So in that sense, it absolutely is a simulation, and it is the word that fits the bill the most. We can say that it's maybe a little uncomfortable, but you know what? There's a lot of things that are uncomfortable that are true, and this is not the worst possibility. We're not here in prison. It just means that the rules by which the substrate that runs our reality is computational, and we need to understand it in terms of what it is. There's a book called Reality Plus by David Chalmers that is actually coming at this problem, trying to replace the word uh, virtual reality with the word digital reality, which resembles closer to what the thing actually is. What's up, Casey? How you doing, brother?
Good. How are you?
Good, good.
So I just got on the live, so I don't know if I'm behind on what you guys were talking about. But Rick Strassman's interview on Danny Jones.
Uh huh.
Have you've seen it? Obviously, yeah.
I've seen a few clips of it. Yeah, that it was talking about the laser.
Yeah, and so it was interesting to me that I guess Rick Strassman's only done the molecule once in his life,
Mm-hmm.
and so it started getting me thinking about like, yeah, it's one thing to study it on mice. It's another thing to have done it once and then study the implications. But it is a whole other thing to study it on yourself over 1,000 times, for better or for worse. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there is something to the people that are avoid the megalomania, of course, and apply some scientific method to the experiment on oneself and what can come out of it. I think some of us may be a little ahead of the curve.
I think I'm in full agreement. This is what people very often do not understand, that somebody who studies the phenomena from the outside simply does not have enough to say in realistic terms about the possibility of what the nature of the experience and therefore its implications might be. It's true that you can say, look, physicists understand reality much deeper than, let's say, astronauts. Yes, but they do not understand the implications of what's possible in terms of actually spacewalking and doing it in real time and solving problems in real time when stakes are very high, right? And that is not a perfect comparison, but it is to some degree a comparison because also don't forget that Strassman really didn't really touch this subject since the 90s. It's true that it was to some degree involved in helping them formulating the protocols for the modern experiment. But again, I do not I personally do not consider him as an expert in the phenomenology of the molecule, and I completely understand why certain people would like to stay in a particular lane, but at the same time, you and I know that the second you see the code, you know, again, people are not idiots. It's not. This would never grow to this size if every single person who would see it would kind of go like, "Oh, okay, cool." Like that would not be a thing. The reason that it's as big as it is because when people see it, they go, "Oh, wait, what?" That
Yeah, it's like the eye roll. They go, "Oh, did you see it?" Well, no, I didn't see it. And the eye roll, like, of course you didn't. It's like, no, it's so not that. It's funny how that can get publicity because it's the nature of the beast, I guess.
But it's okay. Again,
Well, in some way,
we're not
yeah,
trying
you
to.
can
The
feel like,
thing is, I'm not really trying to convince anybody. I'm presenting the
no,
information for what I know it to be true, and you know it to be true. And we're
yeah,
gonna keep testing, and we're gonna keep working. And we do have. I do not mean it in a disparaging way. Real scientists that are currently scientists, physicists that that now helping us out, and we're working on this in a serious manner. And the thing here is that there's really in science that the reason that there is no real authority is you do have experts, but there's no real authority. Authority you can only have in terms of like, well, this person has a lot of influence in the field. I guess you can call it authority, but very often it's misplaced, and in this case, it's definitely misplaced because Strassman is neither an authority nor an expert in the phenomenology of DMT. He's respected because he kind of speared the way in reviving the experience, the experimentation with this molecule And for that, the world of psychedelic research will owe him forever. It's beautiful, but you need to know when your engagement with the subject is became so limited as to be fully removed from it. And I will be honest. I after reading his second book about prophecy, and again, this is not one of these things where I'm just you know uh, saying things to like disparaging things about Strassman. If I would have a conversation with him, I would very openly tell him this directly. After reading the prophecy book, which if you haven't read it, he basically wrote a book about uh, uh, the molecule and the connection between that and prophecies from the Bible, because he went from being a Buddhist to being a Christian. And I read it and I said, listen, his scientific mind checked out. It's out. Like it's not there. The examples are so flimsy. Like it's such a stretch what he's doing. It's like pulling this thing which just doesn't really connect, and it's like literally he's shoving a square through a triangle. It's like what is this? And it's not like this really neat, well formulated thing. It's just it's a mess. So I don't know what happened. I think it has something to do with what he's going through, which I always have sympathy for. But if I have to put it, in simple terms, I do not think that what he has to say currently about the current state of affairs and understanding is very valuable. To me, it definitely isn't. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like the biblical rabbit hole was really coming through on that podcast on Danny Jones. Like, wow, he keeps redirecting it towards the Bible. I'm like, that's strange.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big thing for him. And again, I have respect for that. I have no problem with it. It's just that's not where the research is. I can tell you that again, it is maybe to some degree unfortunate that maybe I didn't push Danny to actually like proceed and do it more and actually see it. But I was already in the habit of like not pushing. I don't think it's the right thing. I think that if like he was clearly going through it. Like it was a lot for him. He enjoyed it, but it was a lot for him. I did not feel that it was ethical to push him to keep going. It's like, hey, keep going. It was not. He saw the first thing and he's like, okay, interesting. But then I could have, but it's just it did not feel right. So I know he's going to do it again. I'm going to show him again, and I'm sure he's going to see it next time. And he did invite other people to see it, and I do like the fact that he's just reporting honestly. That's the real value. But really, these cogs, they're essentially, if you look closer, they're actually the language rotating. We know that. So yeah, eventually he will see it, and we're also going to figure out why that is. And I know that eventually, because of all the high caliber minds that are entering the picture, we will crack this. We will figure it out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, not to sound like a broken record, but another thing that got me was Strassman rolled his eyes on Zoltar
Zoltan.
having experienced a molecule the amount of times he's had. He kind of rolls eyes like, oh yeah, sure. It's like, no, there are people that have done that. Like, come on now.
I didn't see that part. You should send me that clip. Again, I'll be honest. What I'm gathering from him, and again, something that I would very comfortably say to him to his face, not in with no ill intent. I want to make it super clear. But you got to call a spade a spade. He's on some kind of a tear. Like he's going through something. To me, it's clear he's going through something for a while, and everything is just he's very jaded. Like everything is like this that the fact that anybody could easily just have a conversation. I'm not considering myself obviously to be the world's biggest expert, but I think if anybody listens to me for 5 minutes, they understand that I'm a rational, well-intentioned interlocutor. So you can easily reach out to me and we can talk about it, right? And we can talk about the details. The fact that it's being constantly discussed in third person already tells me that there's actually no attempt to engage here with any real attempt to understand. Now that might also be due to the fact that if he saw that my interactions with Gallimore and with Andres Gomez ended with them as people who I personally would consider world's experts in phenomenology and the molecule, and they concluded that it's a maybe at best. I think maybe that what is you can justify his lack of interest in it, right? I can understand that, like because Andres and Andrew are definitely experts, and they after the interaction with me, they're not convinced. So it kind of gives it a certain air of, you know. And to be honest, if I have to be fair, if I would be on that side and I wouldn't have all the time in the world and wouldn't necessarily have the interest to look into it myself, I would I would defer to the people that are the closest to experts in the world at the moment or are experts in the world at the moment, and I would listen to what they have to say about the phenomena. I would do the same. So in that sense, I have no gripe with it. It's just really funny that he does roll his eyes pretty much at everything. I didn't know he rolled his eyes at Zoltan, but yeah.
Yeah, and which is one last thing is like we're really at that, like what Terrence would talk about, like what's the difference between hallucinating something and reality? It's everything's real. It's what you're perceiving, but we're just right on that edge of being able to, with scientifically, with the tools at hand, prove that no, it's not a hallucination. It's just so exciting.
It is, and we're gonna crack it, man. We're gonna crack it. We're gonna make waves. We're gonna make great progress. I know that, and eventually we will create. Well, one of the things that we're now, I was reached out to by this lovely physicist from Germany, and he said, "Look, this is how you have to go about this. If you want to be taken seriously, we first have to go literally from the most basic, and we have to eliminate all the things that it can't possibly be. Let's start there. Then we'll move on to the things that it might be, and then we'll proceed from there. Because what you want to do, and I agree with him, is to make it unarguable.
Going that route, you just every step you just become so sure-footed. It just feels right. Like yes, and it gives you confidence too, because it's like yep, because they pretty much they fall one by one. All the things that
Yeah. So Various is asking. Nico is like simulations.
yeah, I'm gonna go mute. Thanks, man.
No, you're good. I would just say. I was just saying. Oh, I see Various. Welcome Various. Also, I'm always welcoming physicists, which is the thing we need the most contribution in from. Simulations. So I am claiming that I found a direct way to observe a layer that points to the fact that we live in a simulation. Now, it's a very broad topic. Obviously, I've been talking about this for years. There's a bunch of videos of mine that you can watch, but the general gist of it is that I discovered that if you combine laser with the spirit molecule, I cannot really name it here because of TikTok, you will see what appears to be self-executing code in the surface. Now, again, it's just the beginning of the conversation because if you're just discovering this now, you can have all of these options right in front of you, like, oh, it's just a speckle, it's just a this, it's just a that. Yes, we know. We've been studying this for years now. No, it's not. It's not speckle. There's at this point thousands of observations by individuals all over the world. We have serious scientists walking into the picture. Some have seen the code, some have not. But now the question is, how do we map it onto a theoretical framework that actually makes sense, connects to everything else we understand about physics, and lends itself nicely to experimental investigation. That's what we're interested in now. Currently, we're working through the holographic principle, through the lens of the holographic principle, and trying to discern what would constitute a change of the angle of the reference light in the hologram if we are in fact a hologram, and how that would look in relationship to our experiment. That's the best summation that I can give you. Oh, he was on Danny Jones, Nico. Also, so good to see you, brother. What are we? That's a great question. I think we are software. What's up, Yoni? Good to have you. Dr. Luke, how are you doing? And the other saying, I watched Straman on the Denny thing. He surprised me that a person studying the stuff, he has near zero actual direct experience, like an aircraft designer who has only taken one short flight. It's a good thing. He's to be fair, he's not studying it anymore, so it does make sense. Oh, frog dude, thank you for this one. What's up, Ebony? So good to see you here. Ominous positivity. Yoni's saying, I'm learning a lot of experts. Wait, I'm learning a lot of experts don't know. Example, Maxwell's equations and Lorentz force. So you just can't trust unless you. There. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Yoni, if you can clarify. What if we grow a mimosa tree with only laser light? I don't know. It's a full circle, I guess. Yeah, guys, if you want to go on Twitch, that would be great. LaserX83 if you want to contribute to our Twitch progress. We are fractals of the supreme mind. I like that ambient glass. I'm stealing it. What's up, Julian? Like in the concept, what could we be viewed as? And with the system running as it is, then like what would we be? We are the nodes on the system of meaning creation computation. That's what we would be. When the transhumanists learn how to co-opt this and utilize it in tech, we will be in trouble. And holodecks and living room near you. Well, I guess I'm a transhumanist. In this context, like especially in motive force being why the code moves. Not sure what you mean by that. What's up, Amy? I'm Amy? Ami? Charis? How do you pronounce that? And bright evening to you as well. If only a few humans have access to their console, would it be ethical for humanity to push those individuals to focus their time and attention on understanding it? No. Forcing? No. Definitely not. Godhead is asking, is it important to utilize organic form of molecule to see the code or in synthetic form get results? They are the same, actually. The synthetic and the natural one, they're exactly the same molecule. There's no difference between them whatsoever. Oh, you've been asking experts about Maxwell's equations, but few know Lorentz? What kind of experts are you talking about? In physics? You met physicists who do not know Lorentz equations? They are not physicists then. They are not experts. Could you talk a bit more about your experience with the frog? Unfortunately, there's not much more to say. It's really what it was. It just appeared one time, and that was basically it. I wish I could talk more about him. How do I know that beings from hyperspace cloaking the rest of the universe from humanity? It stands to reason that that's what happens. But I mean, these. I think that I won't be able to unpack these reasons in a few moments, and today I'm doing a very short live. I'll try and think about how to consolidate all of that in a like a 5 minute thing, Charlie, and I'll definitely let you know. I think Strassman has the demeanor about a lot of things. Yeah, he does. Yeah, he gave a suggestion to use EEG, which is a good suggestion. We're also going to be doing that actually in San Francisco soon. So Lethargica is saying if I can describe the effects of magnets on the glyphs. So far, we thought it scrambles the code, but when we tested it deeper, it doesn't seem to hold water. It doesn't really look like it's actually doing much. It seems to just be basically scrambling the code. Sorry, it doesn't seem to be actually doing anything. It seems to just be the surface. How does the console change on pizza toppings? Doesn't change. Same console. Yes, if I could have a little bit more work and working on the console with everything it has to do with the EEG and all that stuff, then I would absolutely do that. But I think otherwise, it's just I really don't know. And considering the fact that the molecule really kind of messes me up a little bit at this point, smoking from a vape, so I got to be super selective when I'm doing it. What's up, Van Dweller? Waiting the breakthrough of taking head of cadaver soaking the molecule, then projecting laser from the inside like Wild Wild West movie. Nice. Can I take a picture of it? You can take a picture and look at it while you are on the molecule. Yes, but it is a contentious issue because we're not sure what that means. It might mean you might say, well, that means it's a hallucination. The other postulation is that the code has to be doing what it's doing whenever conscious attention hits it. So we don't know yet. Why can't you comment? Yeah, I can see your comments. You're not sure what optics is, Sofa King? What do you mean? Amy is saying, I'm a total noob about your channel. Apologize, and honestly, based on what I've heard in this live, I was brought here for a reason. Well, welcome. Do you ever meditate with HemiSync audio? If so, do you have links to what you like? Yeah, actually, there's one that is like super simple that I like. It's not Monroe Institute. You can always go to Monroe Institute's channel. This is the one that I really like. Let's see. This one, it kind of combines some music in that, and this one. Sometimes I play them together at the same time, and it kind of sounds really nice. They complement each other really nicely. Equation, do you think the universe would exist without any consciousness to observe it? Well, I think the universe is consciousness. There's a new vape formula that does not use distilled vodka. Really? Well, if you can point me in that direction, Charlie, I would be very, very appreciative. Yeah, it's basically what Charlie just said. Whatever's in the vape, that you mix it with certain forms of alcohol, and I think that really, really sends me down the drain. Even like one puff. And come join our Discord, by the way. It's the third link from the top on my YouTube channel, Dango Thoughts. Somebody's trying. Come on. What's up, Edmo? Can you hear me?
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, brother. How's your evening been?
Been amazing. How's your evening?
Doing good.
I'm glad to
Hanging
hear.
out. Just got done with some tests and stuff, so I'm listening in and trying to join the conversation.
Absolutely. Well, what would you want to talk about? I'm actually going to jump off in probably about 5 minutes, but let's open something fun if you want to chat about it.
Well, I've been listening to the conversation a little bit, but I mean, I think since you're the host and all, I'll let you steer the ship. What's one thing that's on your mind that you'd like to bring into being this evening?
Well, that's what we're talking about here. Are you familiar with my channel?
I think I've looked at it a little bit, not entirely, but maybe you could do like a 30-second elevator pitch, and then maybe we can carry from there.
Sure. So usually we talk about the simulation hypothesis. A few years ago, I've discovered a way to prove that we actually live in a simulation, and I've been talking about this publicly ever since. That's the pitch, the elevator pitch.
Yeah, so from what I've seen and what I've listened to, it seems like you're a bit of like a idealist, mentalist, sort of like branching off of the behavioralist side of philosophy.
Actually, no, I'm not proposing anything philosophical whatsoever. I'm proposing an experimental, verifiable way to do it.
Okay, cool. How so?
If you ingest what's called the spirit molecule and you project a diffracted laser, usually 650 nanometers, so a red one helps. It has to be diffracted. If you do that, you will see code running behind the laser. You will see it 100% of the time.
Yes. So yes. No, I've seen plenty of scientific minds delve into and interact with the sort of scientific end of DMT experiments.
Mm-hmm.
And to me and to those people, I understand their temperance and their desirability to discover and pioneer into reality in that way. And that makes sense, right? But then there's also a part of me that like has a heart with the sort of humble contemplatives of Earth and the religious traditions that says like why is that so much that we need, and why isn't the blade of grass with mildew on it enough?
What? Can you repeat the last sentence? Why is what not enough?
Why isn't the blade of grass with a little bit of mildew on it enough?
You mean just the experience of it?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you? I'm trying to read a little bit deeper into what you're saying. Are you saying it's not enough in the sense like why do we keep searching for more? Is that what you mean?
Well, so I respect it in that these people are like astronauts,
Uh-huh.
and that they're trying to like dive into the unknown, and Terrence McKenna put it in a way where it's like you dive into the unknown and you realize that at the bottom of the abyss there's a feather bed, and I respect all of that. And I respect these people, who are ambitious and brave, but at the same time, it's like, is there not a bravery in finding all the love that you need to be satisfied at the center of a daisy or a weed?
It's a beautiful message. I would agree with it. But I guess what I would ask is, are you okay with just sitting on the couch all day?
Oh, no.
Why not?
Well, the work has to be done.
Wait, but isn't that enough?
No, so our toils of our labor are obviously not the center of our dreams, but our love and our beauty and our connection with God is to be found in this simplicity.
So that's what I'm saying. The simplest thing you can do is do nothing. So why is that not enough to discover God?
Well, because that's not the entire picture. There's obviously like an engine running.
So the point that I'm making is that you make an arbitrary choice of how far you should go and how much effort you should put in one direction in order to find the thing that you find valuable, which I agree with because it's a beautiful thing to pursue, which is your connection with God and connection with the divine and connection with the present moment. But that is a predispensation that you are exhibiting and you're entitled to it, and it's a beautiful one. But not everybody are the same. Certain people, they have a more they will simply get bored from the endeavors that would stimulate you or make you feel fulfilled as sitting on the couch would bore you. And so we all have different horizons towards which we strive, and that's a beautiful thing. So it's not a question of why is it not enough. Nobody said it's not enough. It's just that people have different predispensations and they find meaning in different pursuits and in different levels of pursuits.
No, you're totally right. And I mean, clearly you have a well-read perspective. I mean, most of like the contemporary contemplatives that you find nowadays that are even respected by, former Pope Francis. If you look at Pope Francis, was the first pope to give a address to the joint session of Congress in the United States, right? And he named 3 Americans that he respected: Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, and Thomas Merton. And I visited Thomas Merton's grave as like a young kid, and I didn't really realize who he was until later in life. I came to coming to his readings, and he's like one of the mystics of Christianity that's well respected across the entire globe. And he actually had a sort of similar view to you, which was like this, deep dive into spirituality, and then this reemergence that has this pragmatism to it. And in a way, I'm sort of like antithetical to his perspective, in that the thing that brought him to his tradition is the thing that he should return to. But it's interesting because I myself, I can't be hypocritical here. I have definitely explored and studied super deeply into spirituality, into a way where it becomes sort of scientific in the way that you're trying to explore it. But in a way, there's a part of me that believes that leads to violence, and I'm not sure how to feel about it.
What specifically leads to violence?
Like having a hyper nuanced sort of scientific view on things.
Oh, well, I actually think it's the exact opposite of that. So I can tell you, I can give you an example. Do you mind?
Sure, no, go ahead.
Yeah. So the first thing to say is that you're actually pointing to something very profound and deep, and I actually agree with that. And but if we really look at the details of the situation, you will find that even though it is true that ultimately, either at the end of your life or hopefully before the end of your life, you will find this fulfillment in just sitting and looking at the birds and listening. I was about to say looking at the birds and listening to the flowers, but the other way around.
Yeah.
Maybe you even can find fulfillment in that. Who knows? But the interesting thing is that in order to discover that is the actual thing you want or you want to pursue, you actually first have to go through the toil that brings you to a level where you find out that it's still not what it was. So you still have to achieve a certain level of accolades, either financially or in business or in some form, something that you had to put sweat and blood into. And then at the end of that, you go, oh, I still feel empty. Interesting. Now it's like a barrel of a gun. Well, maybe it's a bad example in this case, but it illustrates the point. Now you really have no other choices but to admit, like, hey, I went as far as I could and I found out that actually I should just do this thing. But the interesting thing is that unless you would do that, you would not be so sure, and therefore you would never be able to focus on that task of just discovering the glory of the present moment in the same kind of commitment. Now, it's true that some people do that, but I would argue that even there, if you look closely, you will discover. I mean, we kind of have to open the conversation, to be a little bit more open towards like the amount of work that they did in previous lives and things like this, right? They already arrived at this life with all of this work behind them, and now they just get to enjoy this one without even like needing to do all that stuff from the beginning. Now, the example that I wanted to give you, which is why I'm saying, to my mind, it's actually the opposite of what you said. I kind of follow this. It's obviously, I'm not putting it as a universal truth, but it is a rule of thumb that I believe is almost always applies. Okay, and that is all evils are due to insufficient knowledge. All evils are due to insufficient knowledge. And that has something to do with the fact that when you understand the world more, you actually come in contact with the true essence of what it is. And that is a communion. That is a sense of belonging and connection that you can achieve just by just being there and just absorbing whatever it is. But at the same time, there's also this other component of combining what's possible in the world in a technical way that gives you access to a deeper understanding of what it is in its function. And I think in the modern world, what we're confusing is the pursuit of knowledge as a noble path and the goal towards which some of the people in the modern world are folding it into, which is control that is basically derived out of fear. But the truth is that most of the fear comes from the fact that you actually don't know enough. So, for example, somebody would say, like a very common example that people give, and I do think it's a good one, so it kind of drives the point home, which is that back in the day, because people believed that when people went into seizures, they were possessed, sometimes these people would suffer very dire consequences, including death, right? That's an evil because people were just sick. They just needed treatment. But because we believe they were possessed, we sometimes killed them. That is a perfect
Yeah.
example of how evil is acted upon because people don't know enough and they act out of fear. And when you discover more, you actually bring yourself to a closer connection with the world. Now, I agree with you that that can become pathological if people just seek knowledge for the sake of the knowledge. But I think that most scientists, at least, like scientists proper, they are in the business because they have this incredibly deep need to understand what the world is for the sake of doing that. And there's a beautiful connection then. To me, there's it's a divine moment when you truly understand something in the world. It's almost like the world turns back to you and goes, "Yep, you got that right." And
Yeah.
usually that's a very
No,
beautiful moment.
that's I think a lot of what you say is very well articulated and harmonious thought. And one of the interesting things for me was this, sort of, it was this syllogism that I heard where people were talking about how, you know, suppose you came across, a undiscovered work of Shakespeare, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you studied the content of the work of Shakespeare, and upon studying the content of it, you're like, I understand Shakespeare. Like that would be a misunderstanding, right? Because Shakespeare's work has nothing to do with the character who wrote it. And so, in a way, because I am a STEM person. I have a degree in neurobiology,
Mm-hmm.
and I studied chemistry, and I know the famous quotes from Heisenberg, who said that the first sip of the glass of the natural sciences makes you an atheist, but God is waiting for you at the bottom. Like, I understand that. But at the same time, I don't really think that any studying in the natural sciences really breaches any of the ground of the contemplative, which is actually like deeply seeking for divinity in a way. But here's the thing: is I understand you because there are patterns that you can find in the pursuit of the development of the natural sciences that are within the contemplative. But I feel like the contemplative has a broader reach in a way. And I think that some of the first things that you hit on, it has to do with my sort of understanding between the works of like John of the Cross and then Christ himself, which is, John of the Cross says you have to understand the dark night of the soul. And so you're talking about having this, understanding, and then this rebirth sort of understanding, which is what John of the Cross says with the dark night of the soul. But then Christ says we are to be like children, and so it's like, to what extent should I come to understand Christ's teaching,
So I think I do find that the way that you describe it is an interesting one. You're saying that just by reading Shakespeare, it doesn't mean that you understand the person Shakespeare. Basically, you're equating it to, if you're trying to understand the world, it will not necessarily help you understand the creator of the world. In other words, God. Is that's basically
Yeah.
what you're saying, right? Okay, but
Yes, correct.
right, but one thing I would point out first of all, maybe I'm overly romanticizing this idea, but maybe not as much as one might think. I do think that if you do read Shakespeare deeply, if you have an interest in investigating people through their writing, I do think that you would get some understanding of who Shakespeare is through his writing. That would be the first thing to point out. But also the other thing is, if you understand, so again, knowledge is all encompassing, like the pure I guess what knowledge is in its essence, like the archetype of knowledge, right? Which I can define as information that can do work or can cause something to happen in the world or attract something, right? So, in that sense, the knowledge of the fact that these are writings written by a person whose name was Shakespeare, uh, then can lead you to an investigation of who he was and where he lived, because there's information about this, so you can gain knowledge of that. Now, this is where the example breaks down a little bit, because you don't have the same kind of access into the the realms of who God is or what God is, right? But what you're saying is that, well, you do have ways to do that, but it's not through trying to understand it through your mind. Which, by the way, I was kind of surprised. You probably know this because it sounds like you kind of swim in these waters. But when I was in the Vatican last year, it doesn't matter, a couple of years ago, I think. But we did this excursion, which I really thank my fiance for insisting on this, because I don't like those, but then she insisted on that, and actually I'm really happy she did, because it's a very different experience when somebody truly explains to you like what's going on and what you're looking at. And I didn't know, and again, maybe you know this, but I didn't know that in the Sistine Chapel you actually the thing where you see the famous David and the reaching out to God and all of that.
Creation of Adam.
Yeah, he's sitting there inside of half of a human brain's hemisphere, and it that would blew my mind. I'm like, oh my God, and they tell you this. It's not like one of these like YouTube videos that somebody created. They're like, yo, did you know that? No, like they're telling you that there, like that's what that's what.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm like, oh wow, this is like profound, right? Because like you're reaching out from the mind. Like if you go and look at it right now, like again, if you knew this, then obviously it's not news to you. But if anybody didn't know, oh, and thank you so much, Sofa Goose. I appreciate you so much for the generosity.
I'm a painter, and I've been to the Sistine Chapel too. But I've had a privilege where my parents aren't necessarily rich, but my dad is a little bit of a religious fanatic, and so he made sure that we traveled to the Vatican when I was a kid. And
so you saw that, right? You saw what I'm talking about, right?
So yes.
Yeah, it's wild, and in fact,
physiology, and it is a half of a hemisphere. It's as if you sever the corpus callosum and then put that imprint around God with the angels, and then its creation of Adam. And so,
well, there's a lot of ways. Well, so the thing is that there's a lot of way to read this, but what I did find peculiar about that and very interesting is that is, I mean, that's impressive. That the fact that was always in the forefront of. Now the thing again, there's a few things to notice there.
Here's the thing, though. Do you find it surprising at all, though, when you look at Michelangelo's paintings and understand the level of anatomy that he understood? Because look at the bodies. I mean, look at every single person that he created in all those paintings. I find it unsurprising at all, because his anatomy was a level of a doctor.
Yeah, right.
A doctor.
But exactly. But so that's actually kind of the direction that I want to point out that there is this thing to notice that actually he basically told him, because he had to do it a few times, like, and then he kind of changed his mind, and then eventually he told him, look, I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna do. He basically, that was his idea that then they accepted. So that is something to be noticed, because it might have been just a thing that he wanted to portray, right? And I do think that he was spiritually enlightened to some degree, and I think that that's a very deep.
They called him. His nickname was the Enlightened One.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Michelangelo's nickname at the time was like, the definitions like vary between the Enlightened One and the Divine One.
Oh, I didn't know that. Is that a fact?
Yes,
that's interesting.
Like when he brought like all the cardinals and the Pope like in there, the evening that he had like technically officially completed like the sealing of the Sistine Chapel, they like walked in, and like all of them like dropped everything that was in their hands, because he was like the master at striking awe into the hearts of the viewers of his art.
Yeah, it's definitely it really is. Like a sight to behold. Hold on, before we move on, I do want to address this real quick. Sofa Goose, I appreciate your generosity. Your question, if I haven't broken through on a spirit molecule over 50 milligrams, yes. I actually smoked a gram one time, all in one go, while I was on already a gram of K. So definitely did that. I was out for about 45 minutes. It was definitely very wild, but I can't tell you that I recall much from it. So,
My friend, though, I would tell you though that you actually bringing that art into the conversation is, I would say, definitely in your favor in this conversation, because I think what you're talking about is like the sort of colloquially non-religious aspects that Michelangelo introduced into his art, which could be considered, sort of engineering and scientific understanding, actually made the art transcend into a realm that the religious didn't understand.
I just don't think that I just don't think they're competing.
Before it happened.
The only thing I'm trying to put forth is that I don't think they're competing. So I think that in order to open the true element of, again, the true gates, you would have to reconcile the two hemispheres of humanity, so to speak. You would have to actually find science. Well, exactly, the corpus callosum of the world. You would need to develop, for example, a physics that derives inspiration from the divine, and you would need spirituality that is constantly informed by science. Like, both of those have to constantly be happening. Excuse me, if we are to actually make progress, because ultimately there's a reason why certain people are much more cerebral, and there's other people that are much more connected to what you would call, the somatic. I don't think it's a coincidence. And what I'm now discovering more and more is that, because I get to talk to a lot of different kinds of people about these things, I'm discovering that, for example, that people that are absolutely convinced that there's a God, they're not convinced because they have ideas about it. It's because they feel it in their bodies. There's a feeling that is, and they don't always know it, by the way. And why would they? Because they always had it, and they don't realize that certain people don't. And there's, I actually had this conversation with my fiance, and she said that if I pray, I actually feel the presence of God. And I said, but how do you know it's not just like a good feeling? And she said, it's just like I'm going to ask you, how do you know that you feel love, or you feel like it's a very distinct thing, and I just know what it is. And I said, okay, I have to accept that. But at the same time, because I am also aware of a lot of things throughout my journey, and I am a long-time meditator, and I am familiar with what states of mind you can occupy when you go pretty deeply into contemplation and meditation and psychedelic states, and I know the difference between those. I can tell you that my perception of the situation offends both religious people and atheists. Is that my perception of it is that religion is an incredible heuristic. It is a really good tool to bring the majority of people that wouldn't necessarily spend the time or have the predispensation to explore psychedelic spaces or meditations or devote any of this time. So for most people, this is a really good, simple tool. Look, if you're just gonna follow this, okay, it will guarantee that your life, statistically, you're gonna have a much better life that is much more fulfilling. And if you just follow this kind of protocol, and it gives you the sense of community. It does not. I am not saying that there is no higher things. I am saying that what these things really are is way more than what any religious person realizes. But at the same time, it is an important tool that I didn't used to think that way. But I was exposed to certain things, and I'm like, okay, I think it definitely is the case that you want to give people the best chance, and it's simply not the case that most people will simply not do that. They're not going to go to an ashram for 20 years. They're not going to go into like crazy heroic doses of psychedelics. It's not for everyone. So for people that just want to live a normal life, this is a wonderful tool, and I fully encourage it. I do start maybe having issues, the wrong thing. I honestly, at this point, like, I'm to each his own. But if I have to be in the presence of somebody who does this with too much thrust, I will point it out to them that the second you start playing with this, like, but it's this way and that's it, there's no other way, I'm like, okay, well, then I'm out. Like, if you think there's one way to do things, then to me, you do not understand the complexity of the world.
No, yeah, I agree. agree. I think that there's like, if the psychedelic experience was like a pool, there's always going to be that like little kid who's standing on the diving board whose like legs are shaking and he refuses to jump in, and so you always have to, deal with that that aspect of humanity because it has a everlasting consequence. But at the end of the day, I think that ultimately you and me are on the same page, and that any conversation we have will just be artful and not necessarily pragmatic, because I can tell you're a good guy and I'm not worried about you. You're not, would be interested to know where you're from, because I'm from the United States, and where I am, it seems like there's a bit of a desolation of spirituality here that is actually seems a little bit futile. It sucks a little bit.
So actually, I'm also an American. The thing is that I like what you said. I have a good friend Zoltan who always says we're not explaining, we're expressing.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what we should be doing always. And then under that, we can also express our disapproval if we think that somebody is kind of going a little bit off the deep end in a particular way that it might damage them or somebody else. I agree with you that there is this, all of a sudden something happened and the essence of what the spiritual pursuit should bring, which is the partaking of meaning, was sucked out of society. But I don't think it's necessarily an American thing. If anything, I think in America is actually one of the last places in which that thing is actually very much still in place to a large degree. It's in a lot of places in the world. It's in a lot of places in the world, and I think that ultimately, I would like to see a world that encourages people to find meaning in whatever in fact fulfills them and brings, well, there's no better word than goodness and the aim towards the greater good of all. If you can encourage people from a young age to find something that fulfills them, gives them meaning, and at the same time through that action they're also fulfilling a higher function for society. I mean, that would be because that way you're connected through everything that you are and everything that you do in life to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
You bring value through that. You understand things through that. You connect to other people through that. And ultimately, that is the most holistic way to be. And you can say, look, there is these, there's definitely the divine. That's a real thing. And but because I am coming from a place of I never felt it in my body, like I now know a lot of people do.
Yeah.
But after many years of practice, I do feel a lot more. And then when I start feeling these things, I say, okay. But I also have the compassion towards the people who don't feel it. You can't make them feel it. You have to create a frame for them to walk into, from which they're, and even to say invited is already too much and condescending, because inviting already implies that you're in some kind of a pedestal and you're inviting them. Well, no, listen, that we're all in this together. Like, you don't invite anyone for anything. Allow anybody. I'm not talking to you, I'm obviously talking in general.
No, allow the moss to grow on them.
Exactly. You and they have their process and they have their time. And listen, in the end of the day, sometimes in certain cases, when something happens in a short period of time where you kind of have to handle it, even in in ways that are suboptimal,
Yep.
sometimes that's what needs to happen. That's if somebody coming at your family, that's what you're gonna do, man. Like it's
That's
a
God. That's God. Making sure that you work out your karma correctly.
yeah, and it's a very difficult decision. But I think that is the sign of growing up, where you start to understand what are the ramifications and implications of every action you take in the world, and what would the impact of it, the weight of it. And I think, again, like Zoltan said in our conversation with Danny Jones, he said, this is the end of humanity's childhood. We are becoming young adults. And part of that is the adoption of responsibility, understanding that we're no longer these toddlers that get to just run around, do whatever they want. We at this point should be in a place where we clean our room as a society collectively, not because somebody told us that we need to do that, but because we understand why we should. And
Jordan
kind of how.
Peterson told me to do that.
What?
I said Jordan Peterson told me to do
Oh
that.
yeah. Definitely.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. I know. No, but listen,
Dude,
it
no.
is in the end of the day, all of these things they really are very important in this point in time because there's a there's an important emphasis we have to make, and at the same time we have to develop, and it seems to me that we are to some degree doing it, have the courage and the softness to also receive things that are not exactly what we thought it should be. So
Oh yes.
both of these things need to work together. Like it's if we where it's at is the center. It has to be like the pendulum has to
Oh
stop
yeah.
swinging
No,
from
dude.
side to
To
side.
me,
The
dude,
what?
to me, spirituality is like running down a steep hill. It's extremely easy to start going too fast and eat dirt, you know. And so it's a mostly careful process where you find the steep hill first, and then you make sure that you're like landing on your heels for the most part and slowing yourself down for the most part. But I could tell that yeah, you're not a guy I have to worry about because I can tell you got a really open and kind heart, and so I appreciate your thoughts, and I'll mull over them. So
I
good to chat
appreciate
with
you,
you,
brother. It
brother.
was a very, very lovely conversation. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night,
You
man.
too, brother. And on that note, folks, I will get some rest. Tomorrow, a long day ahead of us, and more fun stuff in filming. So, love you all. If you want to follow, first of all, Danny went away. You should follow this guy. He's really great, actually. Hold on, is he still there? I can't find his handle anymore. Oh, that's unfortunate. That was lovely. Well, if you want to follow Casey, you should. Casey always does our experiments live. CAW_AHA on TikTok. CAW_AHA on TikTok. And if you want to follow me across platforms, it will be Danny Goller on TikTok. And wait, Edmund Null? That was you, right? That we just spoke? I think so. I hope so. Well, either way, we can. I can always promote you still. Well, in any case, Danny Goller on TikTok and Instagram, Goller Danny on X, LaserX83 on Twitch, and Dango Thoughts on YouTube. DANGO Thoughts on YouTube. Please find the membership program. Come join it. It includes weekly lives aside from the daily lives that is for members only, in which we go really deeply into different subjects. We watch videos, we break them down. There's no commercials, there's no nothing. It's just me and you guys, as many of you as I can pay attention to. And it includes Zoom calls with me, early access to all my content, and private stuff in my life that will only exist on YouTube members and nowhere else. If you want to check out our website about the project, codeofreality.com. And if you go to my YouTube channel, Dango Thoughts, DANGO Thoughts, the third link in all my social media is on the main page is our Discord channel. Please come join. We have an incredible community of people exchanging ideas. It's really lovely. It's really nice. Love you all, guys. Thank you so much for moderators, Ebony and Chris and Jessica. Who else with us? Nico, love you, brother. Thank you so much, Casey. And thank you so much for this lovely conversation. I wish I would remember your handle. That was lovely. Thank you so much for this really beautiful, surprising conversation. More of those, please. Love you all, guys. Have a good night. I might see you tomorrow. I might not. We'll see because we're filming. So you forgive me for being more patchy with the lives. But in any case, good night. Peace and love. Ciao. Good night, everyone.